evening. Hello and welcome to this Christmas Eve special of the India Development Debate. I'm Nayantara Rai in New Delhi. We're going to end 2019 with the country going into protests against the Citizenship Amendment Act and the NRC. Today, the Narendra Modi government, after a cabinet meet, came out with a fresh announcement of the National Population Register. It's going to be conducted along with the house listing for the census in 2021. West Bengal, Kerala, Rajasthan have come out with statements rejecting the exercise of the National Population Register after the cabinet today approved 3,941 crore rupees for the NPR and 8,754 crores for the census. Union Minister Prakash Javadekar specifically said the NPR will not require any documents, any biometric proof. It's only for self-declaration. But as we are in this digital age, the WhatsApp era, the Twitter era, there are round-mumblings of the NPR and the NRC having a linkage. The Census Commission has put light on the NPR exercise, saying the objective is to create a comprehensive identity database of every usual resident. The database will have demographic as well as biometric details. It's going to be held between April and September 2020 in all states and union territories except for Assam. That's where the NRC exercise will be carried out to identify illegal migrants. At a time when a lot has been said and clarified by the government to clear the air about the NRC, the Citizenship Amendment Act, it's now the NPR which is igniting yet one more protest. While the government has said no documents are required, the question is why now? Look at the timing. Before I go to my guest, Pavan Varma, the National General Secretary and National Spokesperson of the Janata Dal United and the former Rajya Sabha MP, here is the Home Minister Amit Shah talking about the NPR after the cabinet briefing. He did give this interview to the ANI talking about the NPR and how one should not confuse it with the NRC, reiterating the Prime Minister has already promised the NRC is not going to be rolled out currently.
देखिए, दोनों में मूलभूत अंतर है। एनपीआर जो है वो जनसंख्या का रजिस्टर है, जो पॉपुलेशन रजिस्टर है। देश में जो भी रहते हैं उनके नाम रजिस्टर्ड किए जाते हैं, जिसके आधार पर देश की अलग अलग योजनाओं का आकार बनता है। और एनआरसी है, नेशनल रजिस्टर ऑफ सिटीजन्स। इसमें से हर व्यक्ति से प्रूफ मांगे जाते हैं कि आप बताइए कि भाई आप किस आधार पर इस देश के नागरिक हो। ये दोनों प्रक्रिया का कोई लेन देन नहीं है, न दोनों प्रक्रिया का एक दूसरे के सर्वे में उपयोग हो सकता है। एनपीआर के लिए जो अभी प्रक्रिया चलेगी, इसका उपयोग कभी भी एनआरसी के लिए नहीं हो सकता। दो कानून भी अलग है। सरकार ने आज निर्णय करा है। तो मैं पहले ये स्पष्टता कर देना चाहता हूं कि एनपीआर का कोई भी डेटा एनआरसी के उपयोग में आ ही नहीं सकता, क्योंकि ये अलग प्रक्रियाएं हैं और उसमें नागरिक से अपने नागरिक होने के लिए कुछ दस्तावेज मांगे जाते हैं और कुछ प्रक्रिया जो असम में हुई है अभी। इसके अंदर देश के अंदर रहने वाला हर कोई व्यक्ति अपनी स्वतः की इच्छा से एक ऐप के अंदर भरकर भेजेगा, कोई सपोर्ट डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं मांगे। ऐसा नहीं है कि आप नागरिक हैं। उन कितने साल से रह रहे इसलिए पूछते हैं कि इसकी एक प्लानिंग बनानी है, इसका आयोजन करना है। और ये डरा डरा कर ही माइनॉरिटी को सारे फायदों से दूर रखा था और अभी भी उनको ये सारी सुविधाएं न मिले, इसीलिए कुछ ऑपोजिशन पार्टियां इसका विरोध कर रही हैं।
We are launching a massive program of national census which happens every 10 years. So 2021 is the census year, and housing, every house will be mapped, listed during April and September 2020, and in February 2021 head count will be done. It is self-declaration. No document is required, no proof is required, no biometric is required. The provision is nearly 13,000 crore rupees, 8,754 crore rupees for census and 3,941 crores for NPR.
I'm now going to go across to my guest, as I promised you, Pavan Varma, who's joining us. Thank you, sir, for joining us on this Christmas Eve special of the India Development Debate. You've been quite vociferous with your views on the Citizenship Amendment Act. You've also taken a viewpoint which is not the same as those of within your party. Having said that, sir, I want to ask you, what do you make of the timing? At a time when you're continuing to see protests, even today, for example, we saw Section 144 in Lutyens, Delhi being, and police being deployed. Why now? Or is it just a case of that you have to meet that census target, so don't do a 1 + 1 = 3?
Well, frankly, I quite marvel at the government. Either it's resolved to somehow implement its agenda, or its brazenness, or frankly its insensitivity to what people of India are saying, or at least large parts of them. For the government, in the midst of this swirling controversy and protest over the CAA-NRC, and the two must be seen together if you have to understand what is the real design behind them. In the midst of a nationwide protest going on with regard to this scheme, the CAA-NRC, now you bring in the NPR, and what makes it worse is that the government itself has, on the floor of the House of Parliament through its minister, Kiran Rijiju, more than once said categorically that the NPR is but a precursor, a first step to the carrying out and implementation of an NRC, a National Register for Citizens. Now, if the government itself has made the link, it's very difficult now to convince people that the NPR is an entirely divorced exercise from the NRC. It's more or less like what Mr. Amit Shah said on the floor of the House and elsewhere repeatedly, that the CAA and the NRC are hyphenated, they are conjoined at the hip, they are two sides of the same coin and will be carried out in sequence as one joint exercise. He has said this a number of times and categorically, but the Prime Minister in his most recent rally in New Delhi said that there is no plan for an NRC. So who do you believe? So when the government clarifies that the NPR is not related to the NRC, but your own minister has said on the floor of the House that the NPR is the first step to the implementation of the NRC, obviously it's going to raise concerns, especially now when there are nationwide protests going on against the CAA and the NRC. So, as I said, I really marvel at the government's sense of timing.
Home ministers also say,
and the prevarication or the dissembling
but sir,
of
if the
Sorry?
But my question also is, the Home Minister today, and shortly after the rally by the Prime Minister, has also said it is not possible to share the data collected for the NPR with the NRC. That the NPR is not going to need documentation, it's not going to need biometrics. So why can't we I'm playing devil's advocate here. Why can't we take that at face value? Why does it have to be co-joined? Why does it have to be seen together? Especially when the Prime Minister of the country from the national capital has promised that there is going to be no execution of the NRC.
You see, it's like this. If there's no linkage between the two, I ask a fundamental question to you: why have an NPR? There is an established process of a nationwide census. It happens every 10 years. It is an ongoing and established practice. You have a census due in 2021. It is a normal thing which governments carry out. India too has been doing it. It's probably in many ways essential also to keep a tab on the population and help the government in other ways of being able to better target schemes meant for the people. Now, why do you introduce the NPR? You brought in the NPR by your own admission on the floor of the House as a prelude to the carrying out of the National Register for Citizens, the NRC. So even if you now step back or try to say that this has got no linkage, what about your earlier statements made, as I said, on the floor of the House, where you have categorically linked the two? My question to you is, and to the government is, if there is no linkage, why did you make that linkage? And if there is a linkage, is this the time when already there are nationwide protests for very justifiable reasons against the CAA-NRC combo? Why are you bringing in the NPR in again at this time? Either you convince the population of India, the people of India, that their misgivings and doubts with regard to the CAA-NRC are wrong, and then in due course, in preparation for the census that is due in 2021, you carry out a data collection exercise. But without doing any of that, while the country is now in great turmoil over the CAA-NRC, you bring in the NPR, the National Population Register, which you yourself have in an official statement, as I said, made on the floor of the House, I repeat it, said that it is linked. It is the first step to the NRC.
You know, I take your point about the timing, you know, and that has not been explained to us, whether it was the cabinet briefing by Prakash Javadekar or in the subsequent interview that we've seen that the Home Minister Amit Shah has given to ANI, where he's asking the country not to link the NRC as well as the NPR. Having said that, Pavan Varma, the other question I want to ask you is, we're going into 2020. The government has passport details, it has Aadhaar details. So how many more details are required by the government? We're talking about a digital era. Should they not be worried more about having a database? Don't they already have enough database to know these are the citizens, this is the population residing here, this is the number of people going out? Or are you also questioning the need to have a census at this juncture?
No, I don't question the need of a census carried out every 10 years. Because there are changes in people who may have died, children having been born, population estimates.
But shouldn't they already be having that information in today's digital era? That's my point.
Independence.
But sir, that is exactly my point. In today's digital age, where you have also introduced direct beneficial, DBT, you've got Aadhaar, you're not even implementing schemes unless you know the beneficiaries digitally. Shouldn't we be working on the back end?
I entirely agree with you that the government itself has claimed more than once that their penetration in terms of the Aadhaar card has reached almost the entire population, and the direct benefit transfer scheme now encompasses a much wider swathe of the entire population. If that is the case, I think we need to revisit the need for the old style census being done and actually try to increase the footprint of the digital outreach. I fully agree with you. Unless you have another aim in mind for which you are using both the census and the NPR and the NRC through the CAA, and people today suspect the bona fides of the government. They do not want a divisive agenda being played out under the guise of mapping the population. This is a nationwide concern. And I think the government should be far more sensitive to it rather than introducing at this stage the red herring of the NPR.
You know, and you have in fact, we've read all those reports where you have decided, or you're thinking of deciding, that you don't want to be with the JDU because you don't agree with the views of the party chief when it comes to the Citizenship Amendment Act. So I'm going to make this my final question. So while we're talking today about the NPR, when we are seeing certain states saying they're not going to support the exercise, by law, can they actually do that? Because they're not, from what we understand in my limited reading of the law, and the law so far has been that they can't do that. So is the NPR going to go ahead unless a court stops it?
No. No, I think that when you carry out an exercise like the NPR or even the proposed NRC, I think you need the cooperation of state governments. This is a large country. It is a federal polity. So the one way to stop the NRC is for, in this country at least, for the non-BJP ruled states, and there are 16 of them, and they cover 65% of the population, for them to say, we are not going to have the NRC. We don't want constant turmoil, instability, discord and acrimony in our society. We understand the reason why you've brought and clubbed and linked the CA and the NRC. We do not want any more an atmosphere of partition in our country, not on the borders, but in every town, village and state. We don't want it. So many states are saying no. And similarly for the NPR exercise, you need the cooperation of the state governments. And if today the government has said that the NPR is the first step to the NRC, and even as the protests are continuing on the NRC, you bring in the NPR. So that is why I began by talking to you to say that I marvel at the government. Either they are so bent on their agenda through the CA-NRC of passing a discriminatory and divisive initiative and implementing it across the country, or they are completely insensitive to what the people of India and large numbers of that, especially the young, are saying about the CA-NRC initiative. In the midst of this, to bring in the NPR, I believe is wrong. The country needs reflection, for debate, of consideration, of dialogue, of a healing touch, of many more doubts to be allayed before the government starts proceeding with another controversial initiative linked to the NRC.
Yes, and I take the point about the timing. Was the timing absolutely wrong? How is it that this has been announced at a time when you're seeing the kind of protests across the country that are taking place? Pavan Varma, when you talk about this healing touch, you talk about consensus. I'm going to make this my final question, and I hope you'll permit me. Have you been able to convince your party chief of your stance?
Well, I opposed my party's support to the Citizen Amendment Bill. I did it on my own conscience and my sense of what is right and wrong, because I believe the CAB, when it was brought to Parliament, was unconstitutional, it was discriminatory and against the interests of peace and social harmony in the country, apart from being against the expressly avowed principles of my own party for a secular India. I was against it, and I went against my party line and did so publicly. Subsequently, and along with me, so did Prashant Kishore and others in the party. Subsequently, Mr. Nitish Kumar has now made a categorical statement that he will not allow the NRC in Bihar. I welcome that statement. I am happy for it, that there is rethinking in the party on what are the real purposes behind the NRC, and our party president has taken a stand against the NRC. And I will continue to be in dialogue with Mr. Nitish Kumar on this subject, so that we act together as a party in the best interests of the nation.
Okay, and with that, sir, I'm going to thank you for taking the time out this Christmas Eve, for helping the viewers of ET Now also understand what the NPR is, what it's all about, and why it is that it is also being linked with the NRC. even though the Home Minister is categorically saying do not see the two of them together. Pavan Varma, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the India Development Debate.